Well, welcome everybody. We're here today to interview four of the stellar authors at DSP and test them questions live. And with us today, we have Charles Ray, we have Alfred Wallon, we have Gary Diamond, and we have Mark Marchetti, all of whom are cornerstones of the DSP building. Everyone in this room has sold books for the company, has been with us a long time, and we wanted to pose some questions to them. Not terribly easy questions, but we wanted to pose questions anyway and see if we can make them sweat a little. Would you like everybody like to say hello to the audience out there?
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, everybody.
Oh, they're gonna. We all should wave. All right. So, Charlie, I want to start with you. Charlie, what do you think sets DSP apart from the other publishing companies you worked with? Why are you so loyal to the company?
Well, I mean, it's because DSP is loyal to me. I mean, you give it, you get it. And it's the thing about DSP, I think, in my experience, has been that authors are not just numbers or sales figures, but they're human beings. And I feel that I get personal attention, that I'm understood. You guys are always open for questions, and you get back to people. It's more like a family than a big family, big corporate family, but it's more like a family than a company. I like the promotions that you do, and it's a fun place to work. I mean, thanks to you coming up with your weird ideas, it's never boring.
Well, we live to please. I think that we're very lucky in the sense that we can try anything and do anything. And I think that's the great love of it. You know, there's no real rules at DSP. I think that's what works for us. Alfred, I've been meaning to ask you, you've been writing in German for a long time and you have a large reading audience in Germany and you've become quite high up the food chain in Germany with the Western reading audience. Why is it so important for you to break the American market? I mean, it seems like a driving thing for you to break into the American reading market.
Yeah, well, that's a long time dream for me. You know, I'm writing Western since 1981. That's more than 40 years now. And I've always had a dream that my Westerns should be published in America. And you can imagine what a feeling that is when this dream finally comes true. And DSP is just the right partner for realizing these dreams.
Well, we're very lucky to have you. It's a joy seeing your German Westerns turn into American Westerns and read. And I was reading just today of some people who have your books on their Kindle. It must feel quite amazing to have that kind of audience growing.
Yeah, because I've never written for the German market. I always had the imagination someday American readers would come to my stories because I'm writing historical Westerns on the first kind, and I've been studying the American history quite long, and I'm always choosing subjects and themes which are unique. So I've written a Civil War novel series. I've written a series about the Bozeman Trail War. I've written a series about the Texas Ranger, which is now with DSP, which takes part from the early years when the Texas Republic was founded. And these are interesting things, and I guess many readers will like that.
I agree. We're starting to see that. Gary, let me ask you a question. You just had a huge success with The Sons of Elias Sterling with C. Wayne Winkle, and that came after a few books that didn't do great business. And to all of a sudden be in the top 10, I think #1 with that one. How did you keep yourself motivated to keep going with that kind of weight, and then to suddenly break through and to be #1? You know, how do you maintain momentum in that kind of situation?
Well, I think you have to believe in yourself, and obviously I had great support from you and from Dusty Saddles. And I think it's also not necessarily a criticism of the stories of the book, or the books rather, or the series. I think it's because you have to get known to for the readers to be aware of you. And I think that's gradually changing now, thankfully, since The Sons of Elias Sterling with Wayne. there has been much more interest in the other books. And I think the way I look at it is that to try now and build on that success that we've had, not just by returning to series that had been written beforehand or even just afterwards, but to come up with something new, fresh, and quite unusual.
It'll be interesting to see how that reading audience responds to it, and if it translates from the Sons of Elias through to the new product, won't it?
Well, it will do. I mean, obviously, the new book, which I'm hoping to have out by June, the latest, which is Ghost Town, is a completely different concept to not only anything that I've written before, but possibly anything that I've read before as well.
It'll be interesting to see. I think they'll move over there. I think that they'll follow you. I think they'll follow you.
I hope so.
The initial interest in the Ghost Town has been pretty high. It's been a pretty acclaimed series on the way.
Well, I've had a very, very good response. I've had lots of messages. When will it be out? When will it be out? Which I've replied to as many as I've seen. And yes, I think it's going to be something that is very different, but also hopefully using the success of Gone to Texas, the Sons of Elias Sterling to help the name sell the books as well.
It makes sense. Mark, I want to ask you a question. You're still one of our guys who is looking for a big breakthrough. You've done a lot of good books. The audience hasn't quite clicked with you yet. Why don't you think the readers have made you a big name yet? What do you think the company could do differently to make you a big name?
I really don't know. It's I'm sure you guys are doing your part. I think it's just one of those things where eventually you just have to keep plugging away, and eventually if one book clicks, then everything else is going to kind of fall into place. You know, you guys have also given me some opportunities to write some different kind of stories. The horror stories that I wrote when you suggested, you know, I try that, and you know, that made it a little bit more interesting. I've written several different kind of books. I'm kind of like Alfred. I like the historical aspect of the writing. I like to there's so much history here that this generation of people have not really studied. It's kind of fallen by the wayside. So, you know, if you interject that kind of historical truth into the books, I think eventually they'll catch on.
I agree. Charlie, you had great success with Caleb Johnson. That must be your most popular series. Caleb
Yeah.
Johnson, Mountain Man.
Yeah, surprisingly.
Why do you think? Why surprisingly? Why does it surprise you that one was such a big seller? Every book in the top 100 sells like crazy, gets great reviews. Why did that surprise you?
Well, I mean, well, first of all, I started that whole Mountain Man series just because I was doing other stuff, and I looked at this whole. I read some books about mountain men, and I thought, you know, I'd like to take a look at that and try it. And so I wrote one, and then when you suggested the series, I took the first book that I had independently published, and I sort of stretched it out into a series. And because I didn't put it in the traditional time frame of the mountain men, I basically took an unusual character, took him slightly out of the time frame that was the mountain man time frame, and had him doing a few things that really weren't mountain man things. I'd get these wild thoughts, and I'd say, yeah, I'll see if I can get Caleb fixed, you know, messed up in this. And it surprised me. People started reading it and commenting on it, and I thought, okay, well, if that's what you like, and I call it a mountain man series, but he's really anything but. I mean, he's a vigilante. He's a you know, one man posse. He's a mentor. He's sort of a Mother Teresa with a beard, and I don't know. I mean, I honestly do not know. I like it. Maybe it's because I like it. I love writing them. When I get more joy out of writing a Caleb Johnson story than almost any of the others that I write. And maybe that's it. I like it, and my love for it comes through, and other, readers do too. I have already gotten comments on the last one, which was the title is a play on a song title, and it has nothing to do with mountain men, and I've already had a suggestion for a sequel.
That's it. Yes, I saw that. I thought that was you should do that. I mean, if Diana Ross doesn't see it, you'll be fine.
Well, you can't copyright a title.
I bet she'll
Okay.
try. I bet she'd
Well,
try.
yeah.
She'd be
Oh,
very
damn,
upset
yeah.
with you borrowing. She'd be very upset. Very
Yeah.
upset. Alfred, let me ask you this. Of all the series you've done, and you've done a lot of books, you've done hundreds of books, and you've been writing them since 1980, whatever. If there were one book that you had that you would love American readers to take to their hearts and really become, say, a modern American Western classic, which one would it be?
Oh, I didn't expect such a question like this. These are more than 100 Westerns. I always think the Western which I write currently and bring to an end, this is the most interesting one for me. But what I was looking forward is this new project you announced yesterday about the Red Rock Ranch, the new generation. This is something where my heart is included in the storyline, because I'm a fan of the Yellowstone TV series, and I always thought, why in hell has nobody written ever a series with such a storyline? So I tried something, and I placed my story in Arizona, and I had similar figures like Yellowstone. You will see it when you read it. This is something which is very important for me now.
Very well. I'm looking forward to seeing how that one does. I think readers are going to take that to the bosom. I really do. I think they're going to enjoy that. Gary, let me ask you this. What is your favorite Western that you haven't written? Which is the one that's in your head that you'd love to write, but haven't gotten around to it? But maybe one day we'll get to, maybe you won't. What's the favorite Western you haven't written?
Well, that's tricky. If you'd have asked me that a few months ago, I'd have said Ghost Town. But probably now I have an idea which I am cultivating that I may put together, which is a revenge story with a little bit of comedy in it, which I used to write comedy back in the day. A little bit more Maverick style in terms of con men and that type of thing. A little lighter in places, and possibly a little darker where the revenge comes into it. But really, a lot of my motivation or ideas probably come from the world of TV and movies, but changing. I like mystery. I like to put things in it that maybe people are not expecting, the twists and turns. I mean, the phrase I think I put with Ghost Town is that it's got more twists and turns than a ballerina on speed. So it's that type of thing that I like to do. So yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of ideas for future books and possibly future series, but I like to take one step at a time.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing what it is. If it's Ghost Town, that you're going to be very lucky because your dream will have come true in a few weeks.
Let's hope.
Mark, I want to ask you, if you were named our author of the month next month, we do an author of the month every month. I think almost everybody in the call, and you're on the list, Mark, so you may very well be author of the month next month. Which book would you recommend to a Western reader who was discovering you for the first time? Which one would you put there in front of them and say, read this now?
I think I'd go back to the beginning of the Texas Jack series with Texas Jack. It has the beginning. It's the beginning of the series. It explains where he came from and how he developed. It has a lot of the Civil War history and post-Civil War history that he was involved in. I would think that, you know, that would spur somebody to lead them to the next couple of books in this series. I'd go right back to the beginning.
Well, we'll make sure to recommend that one when your time comes. Charlie, I want to ask you, you're just finishing up a book with David Watts. It's called The Hunt. We don't know much about it yet. It's been announced. I know that you and David have been working feverishly about it. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Because really nobody has any idea what this one's about, but we know it's going to be a big success because we're putting you together with another guy who's of the #1 bestseller category. So what is it about and what's happening with it? And is it
Well,
bad?
it's not bad. I mean, it's got some bad in it, which makes it good. It's basically he's taking one of his old characters, who's a retired Texas Ranger, and I'm taking one of my characters and regressing him back to his teens, who hadn't decided what he wants to be when he grows up, but will be inspired to become a Texas Ranger. And we have them each of them going on an individual hunt from their respective locations. His character has been pulled in by the governor to go find a bunch of bad guys that are giving him trouble. And, you know, he's one of these guys, he's retired, but they're always yanking him back to go do the jobs no one else wants to do. And my character, who is a 16-year-old, talked his dad into letting him take a couple of horses and go out and chase down a wild stallion that he wants, and he's allowed to do it by himself. First time he's out, and their paths will eventually cross, and their two hunts will then actually become one hunt, and that's the title. And my character's experience with this old guy, Luke Brunson, will give him the determination to grow up and become a Texas Ranger. And the thing about it is, David is a West Texan, I'm an East Texan, and we started the story in West Texas, and we are taking it to a town in East Texas that I grew up 32 miles away from. So it's, you know, we're throwing in a lot of our personal experience with that swath of the state of Texas. Like I have one part I'm putting in, I'm talking about the mosquitoes of East Texas that are as big as dragonflies, you know, and bats. And he talks about West Texas, and, you know, the sand that gets in your mouth and makes your mouth feel like you've been eating cactus needles. But, you know, it's going to be sort of partly humorous, partly serious, and talking about mystery is even now we're about in chapter 9, I think, and just figuring out how the two characters come together and what that dynamic will be. A 16-year-old curious teenager and a 50-something crusty old fart who doesn't like anybody, and how they're going to react and interact. We've been bouncing ideas back and forth about how the chemistry between the two of them will be when they finally meet up. But that's the story. You know, it's two hunts that become one hunt, two characters that couldn't be more different from each other, who are forced to, or who find themselves working together toward a common goal.
Interesting. I think readers are going to enjoy that. I really do. I think that one has a high chart potential.
Yeah, but it's been fun to work on, because, like I said, you got two completely, I mean, the characters are polar opposites of each other, and the way we've been working, he writes a chapter and then I write a chapter, and our first 4 chapters, we totally ignored what the other was doing and get our characters sort of on the trail, so to speak. And now we've reached the point where we have to sort of work out the little nuances of the dynamics of these two meeting, and we've been going back and forth to figure out how that's going to shake out.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's been an interesting project to work on.
It's going to be an interesting one to get on the market. I'm excited about that one. Mark, I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
if you were going to return to Texas Jack and doing it, we've done several Texas Jacks, and
Mhm.
if readers bombarded you and said, you know, Mr. Marchetti, you got to get us more Texas Jack, otherwise we're going to be upset and not buy any more DSP product. What would you do with Texas Jack next?
That's a good question. Since I was writing this last book, Shanghai, I've kind of been off the Texas Jack trail for a while. I think I'd probably put him in a position where he's going to seek revenge on something. I don't know what, but I've been giving it a little bit of thought since he had so much interaction with the Apaches that he might take up sides with them in some sort of endeavor. But I haven't really been thinking so much about that since I was writing, just finished Shanghai, and that's been kind of, I start these books and I know how they're going to begin. I know the point of the beginning, and I know how they're going to end. It's all the stuff in the middle that takes some time. So I kind of have given some thought to a beginning of a new Texas Jack book, and I'm not so sure about the end yet. So I'd have to give that some long hard thought on the next chapter.
Interesting, interesting. Well, I'm sure we'll get you there. I'm sure it'll happen. We'll bother you for one very soon.
Yeah, well, it'll be June. I just talked to Kevin, and so he's going to be working on the cover for the new book. He was kind of surprised at the storyline, so he's going to be working on that for a little bit.
Very good. Alfred, I want to ask you a question. You were with Blitz Verlag, which is a very good German company, and of course, it's a company we partner with. I was going to ask you, what got you to choose DSP to move your English translations? Why didn't you do them through Blitz? Why DSP?
Well, DSP is a company which I feel great sympathy for. Well, it is a company who publishes a lot of Westerns, who has a standing in the USA. And if you ask questions, you get the answer within the next hour or even the next day. So decisions are made very quick. And you, as a chief publicist of the company, you're always open for new ideas. This is what I like. Blitz has another publication schedule. They publish twice a year, always in April and in October. And then they are publishing 50 books each. And when I would translate a book in English for Blitz, it would take a year until this is published. And I don't want to wait so long. So the US market is better for me. And I'm so thankful that you took me in. I feel at home.
Well, I'm glad about that. We're lucky to have you. Good talent is hard to find. You know, it's lucky for me to get 4 talented people in one call. That's a difficult thing.
Yeah.
Gary, I got a question for you as an author. Now, building on what Alfred just said about DSP, do you think DSP publishes too fast? Or do you think a slower publishing routine as an author would suit you?
No, I don't. I certainly don't think it's publishing too fast. I don't think it's a difficulty for any author. I think what it does do is create a brand. It creates interest. It means that people that are attached to a particular author know that the next book is not that far away each time. So I think that gives them an incentive. I think also that the way that DSP particularly, particularly look for the series rather than the individual book, then the reader or the audience is constantly waiting for the next episode in their chosen author's repertoire. And I think the other good thing about it is that there are so many great authors within the DSP stable that the audience is quite wide and therefore are always anticipating the next release. So I think you've got you know, that happening with the authors that are in this on this call now, but also widely within the Dusty Saddle stable.
I agree. I agree. I think that the faster we get them out, the more chance there is of them taking off. I think going slow creates a vacuum of sales. I think the
Well, I
authors
think,
want steady growth. They don't want
yeah,
growth and drop, growth and drop.
yeah, I think that's very true, and I think it's also about continuity. Um, you know, you have a big success. One author has a big success. Obviously, once that happens, then it opens up. Oh, how many weeks later will the next book be? And I think that continuity is one of the expertise of Dusty Saddles Productions.
Well, I think it's a situation where there were so many authors and so many different talented people we want to work with that the company had to move fast to make sure all those readerships were fulfilled. And if we don't
Yeah,
get a book out, we hear about it. I mean, for instance, Charlie over there, we get mail all the time about your product. And they're always asking, how do you manage to balance 4 series each month with a new book every month without delay and add in extras? Like, for instance, you just submitted your competition entry for the $1,000 for a new series. And how do you manage to balance that? I mean, I was told quite adamantly by a couple of authors it's impossible for
No,
an
it's not.
author.
It's not impossible. It's not actually even difficult. I cut my teeth working for a newspaper. I used to be a back in the day in the 70s. I worked for a newspaper in North Carolina, and when you work for a newspaper, it comes out. It was a weekly, wasn't a daily. Thank goodness. But a newspaper comes out every week, and no excuses. You can't say I'm too tired. You got to generate copy. I had an editor who was a very demanding but a very understanding person, and his advice was that the way you learn to write, unless you are one of these, I only write when the muse tickles me, is you write every day. His thing was 1,000 words a day, every day. If you can do that, then you can produce. And if you think about 1,000 words a day, I mean that's a 60,000 word novel in 60 days. And of course, being an overachiever, I made my target 2,000 words a day, which I regularly exceed. But that's item one, is writing every single day. And I do that without fail, unless I'm on an airplane or traveling somewhere. The other is journals. You can't see the floor, but my floor is a filing space. I have at least 6 journals on the floor for different projects. I keep a rota, as I tell you when I send one, and I work on 2 or 3 books at a time, but I put the focus on the one that's due next, and I just keep going. And when I finish one, I go to the next. I finish one, I go to the next, and it's 2,000 words a day. That's 14,000 words a week. You do the math. I mean, it's that simple. It's just discipline yourself to do it. And I do. I get up at 5 in the morning after breakfast. I sit down and I start writing, and I write until my fingers get tired. I go for a 2-mile walk. I eat lunch, and I come back and I write some more. And I do that 7 days a week.
Interesting. Well, I think perhaps we should put together a class on how people can do that, because I hear all the time it's impossible, but I always cite you as the reason why it isn't impossible. And a lot of other authors can do it as well. They just commit to a number every day, do it every day, and before long they've got a book on the market.
Yeah, I mean,
It's very doable, I think.
yeah, no, it is, and it's like you have to do it. You can't think about it. You can't, sit back and ruminate over it. You literally have to have the discipline to put your backside in a chair and write, and not worry so much about, my write is what I'm writing perfect, because I write it as it comes, and then after I'm done, I go back and I I proof it, and I sort of was said, I know when I start how I want to start, and I pretty much know how it's going to end. But then as I'm writing, I let the characters decide, and I just sort of relax and keep writing, and I let the characters tell me what they want to do next. And sometimes the ending is not what I planned, but that's what my character wants it to be, and that's what it is. And if you do that enough, it's like someone said to me once, you know how Tiger Woods became a great golfer? He hit golf balls. He hit 100 golf balls a day every single day. Well, that's how you become a writer. You write words every day, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 words a day. And after a while, it becomes a habit.
It works.
It's just
Works.
that simple.
Alfred, one of your
Yes.
readers is visiting the nudist colony for the weekend and wants 3 of your books to read over that weekend. Which 3 would you recommend to our resident nudist?
Well, I would recommend the Texas Ranger series because he can then concentrate on really important things and not on the others. And I would also explain that my Mountain Man trilogy would be very interesting for him, but this camp, he shouldn't go there. He should turn back, go home, and read something useful.
I agree. I agree. I think
And
that
by the way, Charles, what you said is just my imagination. I write for 40 years and I have never had a writer's block.
Right.
I write each day. I've had all written these 200 novels in my free time. I was employed as a salesman, but if you get used to it, it is very satisfying. That's what I wanted to say, and I like how you work.
Yeah. I agree with you about that. Writer's block is a fantasy. Writer's block is laziness.
Yes.
I think that it's about the individual. Some people, I think, give themselves a writer's block, through stress or wanting a break or anything else. Gary, I want to ask you a question. Pirates in the Atlantic Ocean are one the book to read. Which of yours do you recommend to stop them from attacking British shipping?
There's a question. I didn't know the pirates were Western fans. That was the trick there. A Western fan pirate. Well, I'd recommend them all, but probably Culpeper, I guess, because he's a bit of a pirate himself. So yeah, I think maybe it doesn't attack too many ships, but there's a slight similarity, I guess. If I was writing a book for the nudists, it would be a cover-up story. But the pirates, I'm not so sure about. But yeah, I'd go for Culpeper.
All right, Mark, I'm gonna ask you a question.
Yeah.
Which of your books would you like to rewrite? If you had to rewrite a book and you had the chance to, you know how some people re-record albums or they rewrite books. If you could go back and rewrite one of your books and do it again, which one would it be?
Well, I rewrote Lizard Key, which you guys published through Raven's Tale. And that was the very first novel I ever wrote. And when I went back through, I could see all sorts of horrible mistakes because I being the first, it was not as good as I would have liked it. So I did rewrite that one. I'm in the process of reading. We're talking about pirate books there. That's a pirate book. And I would rewrite Black Bart's Treasure, which was another pirate book. I don't know about the Western books. I kind of started writing the Westerns after I wrote those 2 pirate stories. So I don't know which Western I would rewrite, but I would definitely rewrite Black Bart's Treasure. in that series. Just simply because I was not really associated with a publishing house at that point, and I didn't have the support or the backup or editors that I have now. So I really didn't have a lot of people to bounce things off of and do a lot of editing.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, I think we've come to the end of our recording, and I'd like to thank you all for taking part. I think we've had some good answers, and this will be available on our website and on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook page. We'll be doing these regularly, so readers can come back and other authors can come back every other week and meet a new bunch of authors. And I'd like to thank you all for taking part in this. It's been a wonderful experience having you all here.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
Been great.
Thanks very much.
I'd like to thank you for all the support you've given us. You know, the one thing that I've noticed with Nick is that he checks in with us all the time to see what we're doing, how we're doing, and if we need anything. And that is a much different experience than I've had in the past. And I imagine most of you guys probably agree.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you. Well, it's part of the job. You have to keep in touch. You know, if the shepherd allows his flock to go wandering around, he won't have a flock for very long.
Well, we're a group of wanderers. We'll get out of control if you give us a chance.
Oh, I know. You'll be. I mean, you'll give the pirates a run for the money. It's terrible. I mean, all those poor little old readers out there, they wouldn't know what had hit them if you all visited their houses and moved in with them. I mean, they have to, you know, keep in mind that I'm keeping you all at bay.
As long as they got some whiskey or rum around, we'd be fine.